courage, compassion, faith, freedom, truth. It's time for Courage in the Darkness with the host, Philip Roberts. Awakening America to the indoctrination and radicalization. Let's get into it.
You put out a video, you've done the research, you've cited your sources, you've made a real argument with evidence, with logic, with the intellectual honesty that requires acknowledging the other side before explaining why you disagree with it. You hit publish, and then the comments come in. From your audience, engagement, pushback sometimes, agreement sometimes, real questions, counterpoints, people who watched the whole thing and want to talk about it. From the left? Nah. Sources? That's literally just the definition of conservative. Your name, followed by whatever label is currently in circulation. Racist, fascist, bigot, white supremacist, Christian nationalist, Zionist, and then the block. Not after an exchange. No. Not after an attempt at conversation. The comment and the immediate block. So there's no possibility of a response. No possibility of the commenter having to defend what they just said. Throw the rock, run before the window stops breaking. I've thought about why this is for a long time now. I've been doing this since October, and my brain has been seriously in distress about why these people can't hold a conversation. And I've concluded that it's not primarily about cowardice, though cowardice is involved. It's about something more serious. The person that's typing nah doesn't have a counter-argument. Not because they're incapable of thought, but because the ideological framework they've been handed doesn't produce arguments. It produces conclusions, and the function of the conclusions is not to engage with competing evidence. It's to identify the speaker as righteous and the opponent as irredeemable. Once that identification is made, there's nothing left to say. The block is not a retreat. It's the completion of a process that was never designed to produce dialogue. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. The one-word response is the most honest thing that the contemporary left produces. Not because it contains an argument, because it reveals the absence of one. Consider what's got to be true for nah to be your response to a sourced, evidenced political piece of content. You have to have registered that it contradicts something you believe. And then you have to have concluded that the appropriate response to that contradiction is a single syllable of dismissal, not a specific objection to a specific claim, not an alternative interpretation of the evidence. Just no. The content is wrong because you've decided it's wrong, and your decision is the argument. The sources comment presents itself as an epistemological demand. Show me your evidence, while functioning as a rhetorical performance. The person typing it has almost never followed up on a provided source. They have not, when a link was given, gone to the link, read the material, assessed its quality, and returned with a substantive critique. They block or they ignore. Sources is not a genuine request for information. It's a signal to the progressive audience watching that the commenter has deployed the appropriate skeptical challenge. It performs critical thinking without conducting it. That's just the definition of conservative, is the most revealing of the one-liners because it accidentally exposes the entire framework. In the progressive intellectual universe, conservative is not a political position with arguments and evidence that can be engaged with on their merits. It's a category of wrongness. To identify something as conservative is to have explained its falsity. The argument doesn't need to be refuted because its origin in conservative thought is itself the refutation. It's circular reasoning so complete it can't be penetrated from the outside. Any challenge to the framework is itself evidence of conservatism, and conservatism is the category of wrongness, so the challenge is automatically wrong. Round and round, sealed from reality, never requiring contact with the fact it did not manufacture itself. And the block after commenting tells you exactly what these interactions are for. If the purpose were engagement, if the commenter genuinely wanted to challenge the content or persuade anybody, the block would be counterproductive. You can't monitor the response to your comment, adjust your argument, or continue the conversation if you've immediately blocked the person you commented on. The block tells you engagement was never the purpose. The purpose was the performance. The performance of opposition. The tribal signaled to other progressives in the thread that the enemy has been identified and labeled. Once the performance is complete, there's nothing left to do. The pattern is too consistent and too one-directional to be explained by individual intellectual laziness. It's the output of a system, and that system is the progressive institutional pipeline, the K through graduate school curriculum that has spent 30 years replacing intellectual formation with ideological formation, producing people who have conclusions without the tools to examine them. The shift happened in stages. Academic fields replaced the question, what is true, with whose power does this serve? That framework is not intellectually neutral. It's a closed system that pre-sorts all knowledge claims by their ideological origin. A fact from a conservative source is suspect by definition. A conclusion from a progressive framework is valid by definition. Independent evaluation of evidence is not only unnecessary, it's actively discouraged as naive because the framework holds that claiming to evaluate evidence objectively is itself a power move by whoever currently controls the definition of objective. The result is graduates who have been extensively trained in how to identify and label ideological enemies, and who have received almost no training in how to construct or rebut an argument. They can tell you that your position reflects privilege. They cannot tell you specifically where your evidence is wrong or where your logic fails. The label is the argument. The category is the refutation. When you ask for a specific counterargument, you're making a demand the framework was never designed to fulfill, which is why the block comes where the argument should be. The media that sustains the pipeline in adult life operates the same way. The sources are sorted into credible and not credible before the individual ever evaluates them. The same person typing sources in your comment section shared an Onion article as news last week. The demand for sources is not epistemological, it's tribal. Sources from the left are credible by origin. Sources from the right are suspect by origin. That asymmetry is not the product of media literacy. It's the product of a formation process that sorted the sources before the person ever developed the tools to evaluate them. Here is where this stops being a frustrating comment section phenomenon and becomes something the country needs to take seriously. Ideologies that cannot win arguments have a documented historical pattern. When the argument fails, when the evidence does not cooperate, when the predictions do not come true, when the walls the cable news host promised would close in keep not closing in, the people formed by that ideology don't update their conclusions. They update their tactics. And the next tactic after the argument is the one that does not require the other side to respond. The Center for Strategic and International Studies tracked domestic political violence in America across 2024 and into 2025. Left-wing political violence incidents surpassed right-wing incidents for the first time in 30 years. That's not a conservative talking point. That is CSIS data. Antifa's sustained attacks on federal property. An ICE facility attacked with live fire. A woman arrested in Washington carrying Molotov cocktails with the stated intent to kill cabinet members. And the progressive cultural response to political murder has not been consistent condemnation. YouGov polling showed increasing percentages of self-identified Democrats expressing favorable views of Antifa. The folk hero treatment of a man who murdered a health insurance executive in cold blood. The merchandise, the social media celebration, the professors who shrugged is not the fringe. It's a cultural signal about what the mainstream is beginning to tolerate. The person who typed "nah" and blocked is not picking up a weapon. I'm not making that claim, but they and the person who is are products of the same formation process. The one that told them their opponents are not just wrong, but evil. That normal democratic accountability is inadequate to the emergency. And that the people on the other side of the debate are not fellow citizens with a different view, but enemies who need to be stopped. That progression from nah to label to dehumanization to violence is not a large jump. It's a series of small steps along a path the pipeline has already laid. The temptation when you're on the receiving end of nah and the block and the label and the mob is to match it, to give up on the argument and go straight to the insults. to build the same pipeline pointed in the other direction and let it run. I understand that temptation. The answer is no. Not because meeting insult with insult is strategically ineffective, though it is, because a country in which neither side produces arguments and both sides produce insults and violence is not a country that survives. Abandoning the standard does not just damage the left, it damages the republic. The comment section nah cannot be refuted by a louder nah. It can only be answered by the thing it was designed to avoid, an actual argument with actual evidence made by the people who are willing to hold the line on intellectual honesty when the other side has abandoned it. That's harder. It's less immediately satisfying. It requires significantly more work than one-word dismissal. It is also the only thing that actually works. The cracks appear, they always do. Reality keeps not cooperating with the narrative. The walls keep not closing in. The predictions keep not coming true. And at some point, a person formed entirely inside the pipeline starts encountering enough dissonance that they begin looking for something outside of it. When they do, they need to find something that actually engages the questions honestly, not a mirror of what they're escaping, not a content farm of conservative labels to replace the progressive labels, but genuine argument with genuine evidence and genuine intellectual respect for the audience. That is what this show has been. That is what your support makes possible. Not the nah comment or nah argument. The nah crowd is not the country. They are the loudest voice in a comment section. The country is something bigger and considerably more durable than the pipeline trying to manage it. The working people whose lives the progressive narrative has never accurately described. The parents whose children were processed through the same formation system and who are now fighting to get them back. The voters who looked at the evidence in 2024 and made a different choice. The people on every side of the political divide who still believe that an argument is something you make with evidence and that evidence is something you actually evaluate. And the country is not lost. It is working. And the republic, it is trying to preserve, survives if enough people refuse. In the face of the block, the label, the mob, and the escalating violence, to give up on the standard that makes self-government possible. We're not giving up on it. Keep refusing. Support this network's work at titdusa.com and the Stand Against the Silence campaign. Stand with us, support the mission, refuse the silence, and I'll see you next time.
You are fake news.
Bing, bing, bong, bong.